Hello everyone, in today's lesson we're going to be talking about experimental design. In this first video we'll be looking at describing experiments. So first of vocabulary, we have some different types of experiments that we can look at, and one is called a controlled experiment, and that's when two groups are studied in identical conditions except for one variable. And so there's going to be two different groups that we see here. The first one is the control group, and that is the group under ordinary conditions with no treatment. And then there's the treatment group, which is the group subject to the treatment. So for example, maybe we're looking at a controlled experiment of whether a weight loss drug works. We'd have the control group where they do not have the treatment, and then the treatment group would be the one that actually gets the medication. And so the two groups are studied in identical conditions, but there's only that one variable being that one group gets the medication and the other group does not. And here it's important with any experiment that we have randomization, and that is the process of randomly assigning subjects to different treatment groups. And so a randomized comparative experiment are when subjects are randomly assigned to the control group or the treatment group. So they don't volunteer for either one, they are randomly assigned to it, and they don't know which one they are assigned to. And so usually the control group, to make it look identical, they receive something called a placebo. And that's a harmless, unmedicated treatment that resembles the actual treatment. So looking back at that previous example, the treatment group would get the weight loss drug, where the control group would get a placebo. So something that looks like it, so it's still a pill maybe, but it actually doesn't do anything. And then we compare the control and treatment group to determine any effects of the experiment. And so we look at the end and see whether the treatment group had any significant difference to the control group. And so it's important to be able to determine the effects of the treatment that we do have randomization. Otherwise, some bias can occur, like we've talked about in previous lessons. So for this first set of examples, we're going to be evaluating published reports. So we're going to determine whether each study is a randomized comparative experiment. If it is, we're going to describe the treatment group, and the control group. If it is not, explain why not. So for this first one, it says, at a health clinic, patients were given the choice of whether to take a dietary supplement of 500 milligrams of vitamin C each day. 50 patients who took the supplement were monitored for 1 year, as were 50 patients who did not take the supplement. At the end of 1 year, patients who took the supplement had 15% lower cholesterol levels than patients in the other group. So first we want to determine whether this is a randomized comparative experiment. So I want to know whether the control and treatment group, whether they were randomly chosen. Here, it tells us that they were given the choice of whether to take the dietary supplement. So this is not randomized. So I'm going to say not randomized. Comparative experiment. And that's because they are volunteering for it. I can say, since individuals are not assigned, or not randomly assigned. So that would mean that the conclusion that vitamin C lowers cholesterol may or may not be valid. There may be other reasons why patients who took the supplement had lower cholesterol levels. So like for instance, maybe those who voluntarily took the supplement, they may lead a healthy eating or lifestyle habit compared to the other group that chose not to take it. That could have led to the lower cholesterol levels. So that's why it's important to have that randomization. Okay, number 2 says, to test the new design of its self-checkout, a grocer gathered 142 customers and randomly divided them into 2 groups. One group used the new self-checkout, and one group used the old self-checkout to buy the same groceries. Users of the new self-checkout were able to complete their purchases 16% faster. Okay, so here I want to first determine whether this is a randomized comparative experiment. So I want to know whether the customers were randomly assigned to either group. Here it does state that they were randomly divided. So that means that this is a randomized comparative experiment. Okay, and since it's a randomized comparative experiment, it then tells us to describe the treatment group, and the control group. And so the treatment we see here is the use of the new self-checkout. That's what they're trying to study. So I'm going to say use of new self-checkout. And so that means the treatment group is the individuals who use the new self-checkout. And that means that the control group is the individuals who use the old self-checkout.